Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Retirement Planning Simplified. I am Joe Curry, along with my co-host, as always, Lindsay Wilson. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm great, Joe. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, thanks. Just getting into the swing of the new normal, which is lots and lots of sports for my 7-year-old Lewis, because now he's
Yes.
playing rep baseball and practice has already started for next year, and he just made rep hockey, so that's going to be pretty busy. But anyway, he's really excited, so we're excited for him too. But
And I
anyway, yeah.
believe you're coaching the baseball team too, aren't you?
Yeah, so I'm helping out with practices at the hockey and assistant coach of the baseball, which wasn't originally the plan, but here I am.
Yeah. Well, you'll be extra busy.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I'm going to everything anyway, so why not?
Yeah, I think it's great. So today we wanted to look at a client comment that was left on our YouTube channel from David. So I'm just going to jump in and I'll read the comment, and then Joe, you can follow up with a bit of clarification.
Yeah.
So, keeping your withdrawals down so you get OAS and other benefits is all good until your RRSP and RIF gets taxed at 50% when you die. Great show, David. Joe, can you speak to this comment and provide some additional insight?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I'm happy to see we're getting some, I guess, participation and feedback on the YouTube channel. So that's awesome. And I mean, keep those comments coming because I'm happy to speak to them if I think there's something that's, a question or something we can add a little value on. And so I thought this one would be important to address because um, it's a it's focusing on a very real potential risk of having too much money left in your RSPs or RIF. So when you pass away, yeah, potentially half of that does go to CRA. But like many things in our industry, and I'm sure you've heard me say this on the podcast before, I mean, it really depends how we want to address these things given your situation, right? So every situation is going to be a little bit different. And this is really why planning is so important because we might have action items or advice that's the exact opposite for two different people, given on what outcomes they're trying to achieve and what their situation looks like. So for some, it might make sense to defer as long as we can those registered accounts, so those RRSPs, those RIFs, and that will allow us to get more tax-free growth, right? And so for some people, that's going to be others. But for others, there's going to be reasons that early withdrawals from those accounts will actually make more sense. So just to dive a little deeper, Lindsay, into some of the reasons we would defer on taking money out of our RIFs or RSPs in retirement, I just kind of touched on it, but tax-deferred growth, when as you may know, most of our listeners probably know, when your money goes into your RSP, there's no tax to be paid until you take money out. So that means any dividends, any interest, any capital gains when you change your investments, like you don't pay any tax on any of that until you actually take a withdrawal from the account. So that tax deferred growth may more than offset any future estate tax or income tax on potentially higher RIF minimums in the future, right? So this scenario might be more common when there's other income sources out there or non-registered investment accounts. Okay. Now, keeping income low enough may bring some other benefits also, right? So again, delaying. So potentially you could qualify for a guaranteed income supplement, which is part of the OAS program or older security program for low income earners. So before RIF minimums begin, basically, if you've delayed your CPP and you've delayed your OAS, and you're delaying your withdrawals from your RSPs, you might be able to then, there'd be some OAS there, but have OAS and have the guaranteed income supplement for a while. And you could still be supplementing your income with tax-free savings account withdrawals, which are not taxable. And you might be able to do that through your 60 to get some extra income while your other investments are growing tax deferred, right? So there's definitely some different things we need to consider here. And this would need to be weighed against those potential future tax liabilities like David was talking about. Now, there are some reasons where we would want to start withdrawals early. So again, it's kind of the opposite. Instead of delaying, why would we want to take it early? So potentially we might want to avoid future old age security clawback, right? So if our income goes too high, once we started collecting our old age security, then we have to start getting clawed back. So we might not receive all of it, or at a certain point we'll receive none of it if our income's too high. So you might want to delay your OAS and take some income from registered accounts throughout your 60s so that when you have to take the minimum withdrawals from the RIFs, you'll have a lower minimum withdrawal, right? So if you, again, just to repeat, make sure I'm clear on that. If you're delaying your OAS, start taking money out of your registered accounts while you don't have that OAS, so that when you are forced to take a minimum from your RIFs, it's a lower minimum and it may not have as big of an impact on that OAS clawback, if there's any OAS clawback at all. Mm-hmm. Now, assuming you delayed OAS and potentially your CPP, this is also going to allow you, when you're taking that money out of there, be taking it out at a lower tax rate, right? Because your CPP hasn't kicked in, your OAS hasn't kicked in. So if you're taking those RSP withdrawals at this point, now it's a lower tax bracket, right? So that could reduce your future tax liability. But again, this does not always work out. There's a lot of other considerations. But one of the other things, though, if we are doing it this way, taking some money from our registered accounts or retirement accounts early, we are paying some tax on that. But if we are delaying our old age security and our Canada pension plan during this time period, what it is doing is it's creating more guaranteed income for us in the future, right? And now I know this is something we've had comments on before, is a lot of people have some strong feelings the other way about that. We never know when we're going to die. Take whatever money you can get while you can get it. But again, it's what are we solving for, right? So in a lot of scenarios, for a lot of clients, it makes more sense to have as much guaranteed income as possible. So that might mean spending more of our investments today to have higher CPP and OAS later, right? So depending on what other income sources or assets you have, taking these withdrawals earlier could lower your total tax or lifetime tax liabilities. But it could also decrease your future estate values, right? So it might be less money left over for the kids. So again, I'm kind of bouncing back and forth a bit here, Lindsay, but the point I'm trying to get at is we could look at kind of any strategy and it may be a really good fit for a certain situation, but it's almost no strategies are a good fit for all situations.
Mm-hmm. So really what you're saying is that depending on the situation, the ideal withdrawal strategy will vary. Can you bring it together with some variables people need to consider in this
Sure,
case?
yeah. So I just gave some scenarios there, but some of the variables that are going to impact the best action for you is going to be, do you have higher registered like RSP or RIF account values, or do you have more money in non-registered accounts? When are you going to take your old age security and CPP? Do you have other sources of income and while you're working in retirement? Are you working in retirement, or do you have pensions? So there's different types of income you could have coming in that might affect the timing of all this. What are your goals? What are you worried about? So for example, is your main goal spend as much as I can during my retirement, or are you comfortable spending less money and want to leave a larger gift in your estate, right? Or maybe you're worried about outliving your money, right? So another reason why we might delay CPP or OAS. And then, are you single, or do you have a spouse you could split income with, right? Because that's going to make a difference on how much tax are you paying when you're taking money out of those registered investments. And what's your life expectancy, right? So if you know for some reason you have a shorter life expectancy, that's probably going to change some of your decisions around these different options as well. So each of these variables is going to have some kind of impact on the outcomes, and they can roll over into those other variables, right? So what you do with one of those variables might impact one of the other variables. So everything's very intertwined. So when we're doing planning, what we're doing is we build out a base case with the client's situation, right? And then we start working with these different variables with their goals and their preferences in mind to start optimizing these decisions and build it into the larger plan. Again, trying to make sure we're achieving the outcomes most important to the client, which is really first and foremost the most important thing when we're doing planning.
Any final thoughts to bring it all together?
Sure. So I think the main thing I hope that people get from this episode, which I kind of already mentioned before, but I know a lot of our listeners do a lot of their own research. So if you come across a strategy such as delaying withdrawals from an RSP that I don't want you to automatically incorporate that into your plan, right? So each strategy you come across is a strategy for a given situation, but not necessarily your situation. So make sure you understand how it fits into a broader plan for yourself.
That's great, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay.